Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of Coloring Outside the Box, otherwise known as the Year Ahead 2021. So, the question this year we all need to ask ourselves is, how do we want to create our future? Now, of course, being in the future often means that we're way ahead of ourselves and not particularly grounded in the present, and that will be partly the challenge. The dynamic between where I am and where I might be going. And not really having a sense of where you might be going, but just trusting both your instincts and your intuition. These things will be very powerfully important this year if you wish to begin the process of rebuilding the foundation of your life, as I talked about in the last podcast on the new moon in Capricorn. So, got a little ahead of myself there. So, we tore our lives down to the studs. Now, I've used that analogy before because I really like it because it really describes where we're at. Feeling that nothing is stable or solid. And that feeling is going to continue to come and go this year. And so the challenge will be how to manage that to and fro, back and forth energy, this feeling that we're in the middle of an experiment that we hadn't planned on being in the middle of. And what is an experiment anyways? Well, in scientific terms, it's taking a particular theory and testing it to see if it's valid. And of course, this year will feel a lot like that. So one of the things I would encourage you to do is not get too attached to outcomes and be more invested and grounded in your inspirations, your feelings, and understanding that they will guide you towards something solid and stable, even though it might not feel that way in this 10 seconds or in most of this year. It's going to be still something of a roller coaster ride, just not the same roller coaster ride we were on last year. This one isn't about what can I do to handle, the world pressing in on me and things pushing me into spaces and places that I'm not familiar with. This year is more about being comfortable in that lack of familiarity, realizing that the space that's been created in our lives because of all the events of the previous year will allow new energies to come in, will allow us to see our lives differently, because part of the challenge that we face is often getting really stuck in routine, and when something pops into our consciousness, it might lead us, pardon me, down a road that is unfamiliar to us. We resist it. So last year was about removing a lot of that resistance and reducing things to the strongest denominators in our lives, the strongest aspects of what forms the internal permanent foundation of who we are. So you notice I'm not going to be talking a lot about external events, because often those events are things we have no control over. We can take charge of our lives. We can choose how we wish to take what's happening to us, because I'm fond of saying that life isn't about what happens to you, it's about what you choose to do with it. And that could not be more true in 2021. Just let that sink in for a second. So it is a bit of a gargantuan task to try to sum up an entire year in about 20 to 25 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. And that will come from my focusing specifically, as I said, on how you choose to go into the future and what energies you can connect to help you do that. So there will be this push to blow past all of our previous structures and foundations and boundaries and just blow past into the future, except that we're going to be called upon to do that with a little bit more caution than we might like, because we need to be able to sustain the growth that we initiate. And so it's not about holding yourself back, it's about remembering that all the choices that you make have consequences. Now, I often refer to the planet Uranus, so I'm going to talk a little bit of astrology here, which has been turning our world upside down in terms of what we value, what are our resources, feeling like as much as we want to go down this particular road, we're going to find ourselves going sideways. I often call Uranus the stick of dynamite in the dam of your life. And this year, it's prominent because of its relationship with the planet Saturn. So change has to be sustained. This year is not about change for the sake of making change. It's making change that can lead to long-term growth, that can be sustained over a long period of time, understanding that you can't build the whole structure this year. You can begin to lay the foundation. And along the way, we're going to be rethinking our lives, reevaluating our lives, asking ourselves what's truly meaningful to us in terms of moving forward. How can we see the world in a different way? In a way that allows for more expansion internally and therefore externally. So it can feel all very grand at times, and there's a lot of hope and optimism in the air. Just remember, this is not a time of go big or go home. It's a time of expansion leading to long-term growth. So in other words, all the optimism that you feel does not need to be expended in the first 3 months of this year. It needs to allow something inside you to grow in terms of your connection to yourself, your connection to spirit, your connection to what's meaningful to you, and discovering that maybe what was meaningful to you even 2 years ago is no longer meaningful to you. That's what life is. It's the things that we think are set in stone when we're 18 or 19 years old are not the things that necessarily bring us joy, bring us peace or satisfaction as we move forward in our lives. I like to say vintage because, I don't like the word old or aging. So, knowing that this energy is present and it feels like 1 minute up, 1 minute down, and it's not so much about down, it's ebb and flow. So the optimism will flow, and then there will be not so much a retreat, but just an opportunity to move inward and feel where you're at. Because sometimes I remember once listening to this woman, her name was Sandy Queen, and she said, we're human beings, not human doings. And this is the challenge that we have faced in the last year and will face again this year, which is it's important to know how to be a human being, because the action that needs to be taken will naturally evolve from our being ourselves, finding ways to be our authentic selves. Breaking down anything that doesn't support that. Now that might mean that we find ourselves trying, feeling like we want to hang on to the things that we feel have defined who we are, and taking a look and realizing, well, it's not that they're bad or good, it's just that they no longer serve you. This is about what's healthy for us moving forward. It's not about examining the past to figure out what we did wrong so we can fix it. We always want to fix things, not understanding that maybe we don't need to be fixed. We're not broken. We may be challenged, we may be overwhelmed, we may not know what to do. but we're not broken. We're just in the process of living. Sometimes we forget that. Anyway, so all of this, really intense energy, because it is intense and it's challenging, it is going to make us a little freaked out at times. And when that happens, don't be surprised this year if your circuits feel overloaded. I'm not saying that they didn't feel overloaded last year, but they're going to feel a little bit, oh, heaven forbid if I could just get to what I wanted to say. They're overloaded in a different way, because this year you can expect a lot of aha moments, a lot of insights, a lot of, daydreaming, seeing yourself outside the reality that you're currently living in and wondering, what's the use of that? Well, of course, we need dreams, we need visions in order to move forward in life. And this year you get to define what that vision looks like to you, what it is that you seek in this year. And you don't need to be analyzing this every 10 seconds or thinking about it. You really do need to engage. You need to engage in the action of being, not thinking, maybe not even feeling, just being. And I know that sounds odd, because how can you be without thinking or feeling? Well, it's that same space that you're in when you meditate. It's the ego that wants to know, where are we going? Are we there yet? Whereas our soul or our spirit, our higher self, is inviting us, especially this year, to become aware that we're multi-frequency beings. That is the other message of this year, very strongly, is, the imaginal reality, which is not the same as imagination. That space between where we're at and where we're going is for me the imaginal space, where nothing is solid and yet everything seems possible. And after last year, we really do need to believe that all things are possible. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to manifest all the things that are possible, but sometimes in order to get outside our heads, and in order to get outside our fears, in order to get outside the things that get in our way, our blockages, we need to be able to go into that space and welcome the notion that we don't know exactly what's going to happen, never mind when. We've been in a space, in a place where we would like things to be more tangible. I want you to think about what that means to you. Still trying to work on looking at straight into the camera as opposed to at myself talking. Anyway, I digress. So allow that you're in a transition place, and that in that transition place, in that empty space that life seems to have provided us with, it's not void. It's just not, we haven't figured out what we wish to materialize in that space. And that we can draw from all of the resources and experiences that we've had in this life so far to move forward, to create that future that you want to create, and figure out what you want to choose. So I kind of wrote some notes. I did. And of course, I never say exactly what's in my notes, but hey. So we're dealing with optimism, we're dealing with structure and practical solutions, and we're dealing with change. Those are the key words for this year. Hope and optimism, structure and practical change and practical solutions, and change. And it makes for quite an alchemy and quite an opportunity for well, whatever feels right to you. This is definitely not a year when you're going to want to take advice from anybody. And so don't be surprised if you find yourself resistant to being pushed in any particular direction. That even goes for the earth signs. Because there's a drive internally to seek something that is uniquely and authentically yours. We're stepping outside the known quantities and qualities of our lives. And again, we're not always clear where that's going to take us. We're going to talk in a little bit about what you can do to deal with these very powerful, what appear to be contradictions. And sometimes we forget that life itself is a contradiction. So this year, how's all this going to impact us? So for other than the things I've already said, first of all, you're going to feel less like you're living in a vacuum like last year. And part of that has to do with the arrival of the vaccines. That started to make people feel that there is actually something that they can do. Yet there's all that empty space I talked about. So don't try to clutter up that empty space with stuff from your past, or just stuff, whether it's thoughts, feelings, resistance, just anything. Sometimes, that old expression, nature abhors a vacuum. Well, just realize that in your consciousness, empty space is not a vacuum. Because something from your consciousness will arrive into that space if you allow it. Okay. So again, along the same theme, I think I've said this, we're going to flip-flop back and forth between trying to put things together in the same old way and a deep feeling that we need to change. And again, I want you to understand that that's normal, that is the way that it is. It's not a failure on your part not to be doing things right. And of course, there are going to be days like you feel like you're jumping off a cliff without a parachute. But just know you are your own parachute. And it's not a cliff a physical cliff. It might be a consciousness cliff that you're jumping off of. But you must trust yourself. And fear of the unknown. Because of course, we humans do not like the unknown. And yet it is the unknown from which all of the advances that we have made in terms of mastering what it is to live on the earth. In some ways, we've taken that, we have not always understood that we have a relationship with the earth and that we're not necessarily always in charge. So your feelings are going to fluctuate from overwhelm to sadness, to optimism, to hope, to joy, to feeling like life could be fun again. Again, just understand that some of those extremes, what feel like extremes, are going to be present. And if you understand that and are aware of that, it will cause less internal upheaval. So, how can we use these energies positively? Good question. Well, first of all, when I was summing up the year 2020 in the Llewellyn Sun Sign book, which I wrote, I said that the purpose of last year had a lot to do with, besides clearing stuff out and helping us purge and cleanse and transform, was to give us the space and the place to move confidently into the future as the conflict between the past and the future converges in the present. And that's a lot what this year is like. And so it's not like, you know, you're going to leave the past in your rearview mirror and look and spend all your time looking forward into the future. It is a case of integrating those energies in this present moment. In other words, bringing forward from the past the core of who you are, ready to grow that core, and to begin that process now to create that future, even if you have no clear idea what it is, just an inkling that, well, I should try that. So it's okay to spend your time with your attention turned inward. You'll find all the resources that you need. In fact, you'll discover quite interesting exactly how many resources you have at your disposal. Sorry, I keep tilting my head upwards and getting the light in my glasses. I have, you know, I move a lot. That's all I can say. So think again. You know, throughout the course of human history, humans have often been in this space, in this place, feeling like their backs up against the wall and they have no idea where they're going to go. And here comes one of those cliches that bears repeating. Necessity is the mother of invention. So if you feel you are inventing a new life, you will have those aha moments. So what is it going to take? I have to look over here to look at these other notes. What does it require this year in order to be able to take that leap into the future? Well, the ability to trust yourself, the ability to celebrate yourself, take stock, take a look at what you have accomplished in your life, understanding that that will show you, again, that you can accomplish much going forward. That just because it feels like everything in your world turned upside down and nothing, and everything has either dissipated or exploded or whatever, you have not. You have not. And if you look at your life and you take stock, you'll realize how many times you've been in situations where you needed to open a new door, needed to build something new. This seems on a grander scale because it is, but you still have the capacity within you to do those things and to celebrate that. The ability to listen to your imagination, not to dismiss it, no matter how crazy it seems. To learn to play in that world and understand that that world fuels your life more than you realize. We're so used to measuring things in terms of external reality when we don't realize that we created that reality. And if we did that, we can create new realities for ourselves. The reality to release, what I meant to say is the willingness and the ability to release anything that is toxic or not useful anymore. I mean, really, I want to use this analogy, and I don't even know if it works, but here we go. This year, I decided to, oh, for heaven's sakes, replace my electrical panel. And the symbolism that, not that the other electrical panel didn't work anymore, it just was old and it didn't function as well as it needed to. So again, it's not that we need to toss ourselves aside. We just need to realize that aspects of who we are and where we're going have fulfilled their purpose. And it is now time to leave space and place for new purpose, for new electrical panels, as it were. Want you to be able to move beyond judgment to discernment. Now, really, when you look at the definition of both of those words, they're very similar, except The reason why I'm using discernment rather than judgment is because judgment packs a powerful punch in the world that we live in. And so we often use judgment in reference to being critical. And discernment is more a case of, okay, I'm looking at this. What do I see? What do I feel? And what conclusions can I draw? So I can decide what works for me. So it's really interesting when we find ourselves, as we do in the year 2021, moving beyond a reality that we thought was set in stone and which got turned on its ear last year. And I'm not going to say that we're all not reeling or still struggling or feeling overwhelmed by our experiences last year. Please don't think that, you sort of need to shove all that aside and you can't, that old expression, off with the old before you're on with the new. Well, it would be really nice if life was that simple, but it's not. So again, the interplay between the past and the future and the present continues really so profoundly this year. It's not that those things are not always true in other years of our lives. It's just because of the experience that we're having and because everything seems topsy-turvy, it has been almost impossible at times to feel that there's anything that last year that you could do to change the outer reality, because there wasn't. And we then spent a lot of time trying to figure out why that was happening, how we could get past it, as opposed to being present for the experience, as challenging as it is, because the earth is a place of duality, at least at this point in time. And so we need to operate within the time-space continuum, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. And this year feels like such an intense immersion into that truth between, the time and space, the duality, the extremes. Now, last year was a very, I don't want to say negative, but it took us to the shadow of life. And this year, the intensity of our experience has to do with as much about optimism and hope as it has to do with cleaning up any leftover detritus from the past. So, how do we keep ourselves grounded in the middle of all that? Well, first of all, one of the best ways to do that is to find an activity, something that you enjoy doing for the sake of doing it, just for being present in it. It doesn't, that could be anything that you want it to be. It could be writing. It could be starting your own podcast. It could be whatever brings you joy. It could be, turning on music and dancing every day. We need at this point in time to truly embody joy in our lives and recognize that it's often really simple to do that. It's not a complicated thing. And, whatever brings you joy, it could be singing your favorite song. It could be holding your grandchild or holding your newly born child who chose to come onto the planet in the middle of a pandemic. It could be, there is no way that I can cover everything that might bring joy to the people who are actually participating in this podcast. That's that's up to you. So it is, we've been asked to simplify our lives because And that simplified, emotionally simplified, spiritually simplified, intellectually simplified, physically. You know, taking better care of yourself, whatever that means to you, eating better, going for massage. And I, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, so we're going to move on from that. How do you embody your joy? How do you embody yourself? And I know that we think, well, I'm in a body, so I'm embodying myself. Well, not necessarily. This year really is about embodying your authenticity, about being who you are. Now that might seem like, well, that's whatever. What does that mean? Well, that's a good question, because that's different for everybody, because we're not all the same. And so how you choose to embody yourself has to do with who you are. And you might discover all kinds of things in the back of your head that you thought you always wanted to do and you never did them. So what other things can we do? I thought I had another page and I did. I just scrolled by it. Anyway, remember that, again, you've created your life up to this point and you can continue to create it. And now you get to create it in some new and different ways. You get, I'm thinking about how we tend to view ourselves as, you reach a certain age, haven't you done it all? Like my children keep on asking me, well, aren't you semi-retired yet? And for me, I can't imagine that I'm going to go through life without accomplishing something. And that might be different from day to day. But for me, I need to be creating. I need to be engaged. And so this year really is about how do you re-engage in your life in a way that is vital and joyful. That's what Jupiter is asking of us as it wanders through the sign of Aquarius. And I know, I'm sure almost everybody's heard about the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius that took place on December 21st, which is the beginning of a new 200-year cycle. And the invitation is to change. The invitation is to get outside the box. However, that is a process. Unfortunately, as much as we might all wish we had a magic wand, we don't. At least not the one that waves in the air and goes bing. You may have a magic wand inside you that initiates the process of creation of something new and powerful and profoundly important to you. So please, this year, be clear. Discover what you truly value. Discover what is truly meaningful to you. Take a look at what you value. Take a look at how you were living your life, not from a place of being critical, but just from the place of objectivity, from being detached. People often assume that being detached means being disconnected, and that's not what it means. What it means is the capacity to step back and just have a look. And be clear. Don't look for mistakes. Don't look for failure. Just look. Look at what happened. Look at what you did. And in those experiences, you will find who you really are and the core of what it is you can accomplish going forward, because it's you that's going to accomplish it, not the outer world. I said, the seeds of the future are in the aha moments. You can develop new skills or see skills you would like to develop. The other thing I want to say, and I was talking about embodying it, it's important to spend time outdoors. Because that will keep you grounded as you try to navigate this year. Well, it seems I've run out of things to say, strangely enough. And I can just hear all the people who know me saying, is that possible? There is such a huge invitation in 2021. And I hope with all my heart that each one of us, including me, has the determination and the courage to cross the threshold of that invitation, understanding that it's a beginning and what an exciting beginning it can be. So I wish you all well in 2021. And I will be putting together some keyword messages for each of the sun signs sometime in the next couple of days. And I will be sending them out in my newsletter. So if, you could go to my website, www.lesliefrancis.com, and sign up for my newsletter. But I will be posting it in other places, and my homepage is undergoing a renovation. So at some point they will be posted to my website as well. So giving thanks again for all the blessings that life has provided me, and I hope you feel the same way about your life. And remember, if you're looking at your life, whatever happened was a gift, had a treasure in it, even though you might have hit the wall going 90 miles an hour. I don't know if I want to leave on that image, but anyways, I wish you well again. Take care, and I'll be back in a few days to talk about what life is going to be like as we go through the sign of Aquarius. Ta-ta for now.